Have you ever carried something you couldn't put down? Not in your hands, but in your heart? A memory, a mistake, a word you wish you could take back. Forgiveness. We speak of it as a gift to others, but rarely do we realize it's the anchor that holds us. This single story holds a truth that may change how you see guilt, grief, and the sea itself. There was once an old fisherman who lived by the shore. Every dawn he would row his small boat out into the mist, though he no longer cast his nets. He wasn't fishing for anything in the water, he was searching for what he had lost beneath it. Years ago, in a storm that split the sky, he had watched his son's boat go under, and it never came back. They said time heals, but time, for him, had only deepened the silence. The sea had taken his boy, and left him the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Until one morning he decided to write a letter. The fisherman's name was Elias. His cottage stood on the farthest end of the coast, where the rocks turned black and the wind spoke through broken windows. Every morning, before the light reached the village, he walked down the pier with his lantern, not to fish, but to look. He would stand at the edge, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for a ripple, a sign, anything that might return what the sea had taken. Inside his cottage, the walls were lined with maps, old ropes, and a single photograph. A boy, no older than 20, smiling beside a small wooden boat. The frame was cracked, the glass salt-stained from years of tears he'd never admit to shedding. He hadn't spoken his son's name aloud in years. It had become sacred, like a prayer that hurt to whisper. Neighbors tried to comfort him. "You did everything you could, Elias," they said. "The storm was merciless." He only nodded. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had told his son to go out that day, told him the waves would calm, told him courage was stronger than caution. And that was the lie that drowned them both. When the wind howled, he could almost hear his boy's voice in it, calling or accusing, he couldn't tell. The guilt became a companion, as constant as the tide. He stopped joining the fishermen at the tavern, stopped mending nets, stopped answering when people knocked. Some called him mad. Others said grief had turned his soul to driftwood. One night, during a storm much like the one that took his son, Elias lit his lantern and went to the shore again. The sea was roaring, white foam crashing against the rocks. He felt the pull, the same deadly pull his son must have felt, the temptation to walk straight into the water and let the waves decide his punishment. He stepped closer until the cold spray hit his face. His lips moved in silence. "What do you want from me?" he asked the sea. "What else can I give you?" But the sea gave no answer. Only the echo of his own voice carried back to him, broken and small. That night, he dreamt of his son, standing on the deck, smiling as if nothing had happened. The boy was holding something, a folded paper fluttering in the wind. When Elias reached out, the dream shattered into the sound of waves slapping against his window. He woke with a single thought. Maybe the sea doesn't take. Maybe it's waiting. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was the pale blue of forgiveness, but Elias didn't believe in signs anymore. Still, something about the dream lingered. The paper in his son's hand, the look in his eyes. It wasn't accusation. It was invitation. Elias took his old coat, the one still smelling faintly of the sea, and walked down the beach. The sand was littered with driftwood and seaweed, the aftermath of the night's fury. He followed the trail until he reached the place where his son's boat had last been seen, a quiet cove surrounded by cliffs. The tide was low, and in the sunlight the water shimmered like glass. That's when he saw her. The old woman who sometimes gathered shells along the shore. She was sitting on a rock, her skirt fluttering in the breeze, eyes distant as though watching something beyond the horizon. "You come here often," she said without looking at him. Elias hesitated. I used to fish here. She nodded slowly. Used to. And now you come to remember. He said nothing. The waves spoke for him. After a moment, she reached into her basket and pulled out a small bottle. Inside was a folded letter, sealed with a bit of wax. I throw one into the sea every month, she said, for those who never came back. Elias frowned. And you think they read them? The woman smiled faintly. No, but I think the sea does, and the sea never forgets. He studied her face, calm, weathered, kind. She reminded him of the wives who used to wait on the docks when the storms rolled in, praying for sails that never appeared. What do you write? He asked. Anything that needs to be forgiven, she said. Words weigh less when written, lighter still when set free. That evening, Elias returned home and sat by the window overlooking the shore. The wind was gentle now. He took out a sheet of paper and a pen so old it barely wrote. The first words came slowly, clumsy and stiff. My son. He paused. The sea outside seemed to hold its breath. Then, with trembling hands, he continued. Line after line, he poured out everything he had never said, the regret, the apology, the love buried beneath years of silence. When he finished, the letter was soaked with tears, his own salt mingled with the ocean's. He folded it carefully, sealed it in a small glass jar, and placed it on the table beside the lantern. Tomorrow, he would give it back to the sea. At dawn, the world was hushed. A thin mist drifted over the water like breath. Elias stood barefoot on the wet sand, holding the glass jar to his chest. The paper inside gleamed faintly in the morning light, as though his son's spirit already knew what was coming. He walked until the waves lapped at his ankles. For a long moment he simply stood there, feeling the cold pull of the tide, the rhythm that had once terrified him now strangely tender. The sea was no longer an enemy. It was a mirror. I can't bring you back, he whispered, but maybe I can stop drowning with you. He drew a deep breath, kissed the lid of the jar, and let it go. The current caught it instantly. It spun once, twice, then drifted outward, small and shining like a piece of forgiveness carried on a silver thread. As the jar disappeared into the horizon, something inside him broke, softly, like a shell cracking open. For the first time in years, he felt air fill his lungs without weight. The guilt, the anger, the endless questioning, all of it seemed to fade with the receding tide. He fell to his knees, not from grief but release. The sea roared and glistened, no longer a grave but a gate. When he returned home, the photograph on the shelf caught the sunlight. The crack in its glass was still there, yet it no longer looked like a wound, but a path where the light entered. What the old fisherman discovered that day was not magic. It was release. For years, he believed punishment was the only proof of love. He thought that by holding on to guilt, he was keeping his son close. But forgiveness, as the sea showed him, is not forgetting. It's remembering without the wound. There's a reason the sea returns everything we try to bury. It mirrors the heart. You can throw anger, grief, or shame into it, but sooner or later, the tide will bring it back. Not to punish you, but to remind you that healing begins only when you stop fighting the current. Elias's act of releasing the letter was symbolic, yes, but it was also deeply human. Each of us carries our own version of that glass jar, filled with what we cannot say, cannot change, cannot undo. Some carry it for years, even decades, waiting for the perfect moment to let it go. But there is no perfect moment. There is only the courage to release it now. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming the present. It's saying, "This happened, but it no longer owns me." It's the art of returning ownership of pain to time itself. When you forgive, truly forgive, you don't rewrite the story. You simply stop letting it control the ending. In our world today, many of us live like Elias, haunted by the ghosts of choices we can't undo, words spoken in anger, relationships left to drown in silence, dreams we watched sink beneath the weight of our own pride. We replay them over and over, as if self-punishment could somehow rewrite history. But guilt, when left unchecked, becomes its own storm. It doesn't honor the past, it drowns the future. The lesson the fisherman learned by the shore is one we all need to relearn. Forgiveness is not a favor to others. It's a freedom for yourself. When you release what burdens you, you create space for life to breathe again. Maybe your letter isn't written on paper. Maybe it's a conversation you've avoided, a truth you've hidden from, or a part of yourself you still blame. Whatever form it takes, know this: you can't sail toward peace while dragging an anchor of regret. Try this. Tonight, write it down. Everything you wish you could say. Every mistake, every name, every ache. Don't hold back. Then, burn it, bury it, or tear it apart. Watch as the smoke or ash or fragments rise, and know that in that small act, you are choosing to live lighter. Because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as surrender. It's not about letting others off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the line that's kept you tethered to pain. The sea didn't change that morning. Elias did. The waves were the same, the wind still carried salt, and the photograph on his shelf remained cracked. But when he looked at it, he no longer saw failure. He saw love, raw, imperfect, enduring. The old fisherman's story isn't just about the past. It's a map, one that leads us back to ourselves. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too, the quiet invitation of the sea whispering, "Let it go. You are forgiven." So, what about you? What letter have you kept sealed inside your heart? The one you've never dared to send? Maybe it's time. Not for them, but for you. Maybe tonight is your tide turning, the night you finally set that weight free. You don't need a sea. You just need a little stillness, a piece of paper, and the courage to say goodbye to what no longer deserves to live inside you. Write it, speak it, release it. Then, watch what happens. How your breath deepens, how the world feels lighter, how your reflection begins to look like someone you can forgive. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems the present. And that redemption, quiet, unseen, patient, is where peace begins. So tell me, what battle are you ready to face today? What truth will you free from the depths of your own heart? If this story found a place within you, let it stay. Share it with someone still holding on. And if you believe in stories that heal, like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.